So while we wait, just welcome everybody. I'm going to do it again, but just in case, welcome to the workshop on transforming global trade for smallholders and building back fair post-COVID. We are now just waiting for confirmation that we can start. Can anyone help us to understand if we are live? That would be useful so that we know. Okay, so we understand that we are live. So welcome everybody to the event Transforming Global Trade for Smallholders, Building Back Fair Post-COVID. This is a side event in the WTO Public Information Forum, and welcome. And my name is Sergi Corbalan, and I'm the director of the Fair Trade Advocacy Office. And it is my pleasure to serve as moderator of this session today. This session is being interpreted into French and into Spanish. So I'm asking the panelists to speak slowly, and I'm saying to myself, and welcome everybody that is following us through Zoom and through the live stream function, and also to all those that will maybe listen to it afterwards, as the recording of this event will be available. This session will include very interesting panelists, and I'm going to introduce them to you briefly. First and foremost, we'll have Danielle Legarda, an economist with training in foreign trade and business management, with extensive experience in the union sector and experience in consulting and advisory services, and as well as professor of macroeconomics in several universities. And he is currently Ecuador's Vice Minister of Foreign Trade of the Ministry of Production, Foreign Trade, Investment and Fisheries of Ecuador. Welcome. After the Vice Minister, we'll hear from ROXANA Cayo. ROXANA is the coordinator of Red OIPAIC, which is the economic organization of producers and artisans with cultural identity in Bolivia. She's a member of the Bolivian Artisans Board and the president of the National Fair Trade Platform of Bolivia, an entity that represents around 2,000 organized smallholder producers of fair trade certified coffee, quinoa, cocoa, Brazil nuts, and handicrafts. She has constantly promoted more spaces for the inclusion of women and youth, especially in fair trade organizations. We will also count with Anders Aeroe, who is the director of the Division of Enterprises and Institutions of the International Trade Center, also based in Geneva, like WTO, a sister organization. And before joining ITC, he was based in South Africa as regional advisor for the Danish Industrialization Fund for Developing Countries, and has had different management positions in the past. He holds a PhD in industrial economics from Copenhagen Business School and has also been a research fellow at different institutions. Thanks for joining. And last but not least, we'll also count as panelists with Nyagoi Nyongo, who is the global CEO of the Fair Trade System. Before that, Nyagoi served as executive director of Fair Trade Africa since 2013, and she has a wealth of experience in the fair trade sector, and she worked as a fair trade auditor, actually, and has all sorts of experience as consultant and auditor for public and private sector. She holds a PhD in forest biology, wood science, from different universities. So that's an introduction of who we're going to be talking to, and we're going to be listening from. But about what? Well, we want to put smallholders on the agenda of the WTO. There are, of course, a lot of discussions, and rightfully so, about the importance to make trade work for developing countries, and rightfully so. But we want to say, and what's in for smallholder farmers? We know that this is the unsung heroes of trade, as Anders will elaborate further. And we know as well that they are often amongst those that have suffered the most with the impact of the COVID pandemic. So we thought collectively that it could be a good idea to devote this session to them, smallholder farmers, and see how we can empower them in particular in the wake of the COVID pandemic. So with this objective in mind, I'm going to be now asking some questions to the panelists. I will start with Prime Minister Legarda. I will ask different questions to different panelists, and then there will be the opportunity to actually ask questions. So there is a mechanism that allows me to see them, and I hope I can manage to read them all and read them out so that you can answer them. After that, there will also be an opportunity for a 1 to 2 minute final intervention by each panelist. I hope it's clear. Sorry, I was a bit long. And now I want to give the floor right away to Vice Minister Legarda. And I have, Vice Minister, first of all, thanks for being here and your leadership. And I would like to ask you to begin with, what are the lessons learned in your view from the disruption caused by COVID and from the adaptive mechanisms that emerged?
Thank you, Sergio. First of all, I must check if you can hear me well.
Yes.
Well, on the contrary, thanks to you for the invitation on this important public forum for the World WTO, and to all the panelists as well, and of course to all the people that has joined us today to hear about this important aspect of trade and development. I extend all my regards from the government of Ecuador and the charge that I am right now from Vice Minister of Foreign Trade. So just a little bit of context to answer this important question, Sergey. It's a couple of numbers on this. In last year, with COVID, counting on it, Ecuador experienced a rise in its export of non-oil products, especially for food products, which is good. This increase was about 10%, and this is a phenomenon that is been happening in many countries that produce and export a lot of food products. But we did have a decrease in the exports for small associations and small producers for about over 20%. So that's a kind of an alert. But among all of these, the producers and the exports that are certified, or at least that we follow up, that have fair trade or some kind of fair trade development, have raised for about 30%, which is an amazing number on this. And this is these numbers I wanted to give in the context for the highlights or the lessons learned that we all need to follow. We've been discussing in several forums about the changes that the COVID situation has bring to the world, and especially to trade and to consumption in this. So of course there is some changes in consumption. There is a disruption in the logistic chains that has been difficult for all countries, but especially for developing ones. And we have also experienced some competitive disadvantages. Just to remind that Ecuador, it's a dollarized country, so this brings a lot of challenges to our economy as well. But among all of these, the main lessons learned on the COVID crisis and the trade related to food production and fair trade especially, it's first of all highlight the importance of international relation and international markets for food products and for fair trade products especially. It could not be definitely fair trade if there were not be international markets. And I say this because at the beginning of the pandemics, there was a lot of fear about what is going to happen with trade regarding the effects of COVID. And there was a lot of voices saying that we need to implement some restrictions to trade, not only in our country, but among all the countries. And I believe this was due to mainly fear to the unknown, to what's coming up next. But definitely what we are seeing is that it was not necessary to implement restrictions on trade, and that will be a loss for all the world, but especially for developing countries. Rather than that, we need to implement facilitation measures to make sure that food products get to all the world, and especially to the countries that need the most. But also in terms of fair trade, we need to make sure that the main markets that are moving the consumption of fair trade products are open for the arriving for these specific products that benefit a lot of small producers. So first of all, it's highlight the importance of international market and the institutions among it and the WTO rules with it. And then in Ecuador, especially, the main lessons that we identify inside that we've been following up with this, but with COVID kind of accelerated in some way. It's I'll talk about facilitation. This is the main issue, simplifying everything that we can in terms of specific trade and internal measures to make all the processes and requirements the most as easy as we can, especially for small producers and small exporters and associations for these products. So it's digitalizing processes and working with trade facilitation. It's been an important priority for the work in Ecuador. The second one is establishing a national strategy to promote e-commerce. E-commerce, it's well known that it's been pretty much moved with the COVID situation. But for us, it was a plan that came after the COVID, and it's now been accelerating. So we now have a strategy, a national strategy to promote e-commerce, and it has a special focus on small and medium size enterprises, and of course with fair trade organizations and products subsequently. So this is an important also lesson learned that we are following up. Then the other one is to strengthen the institutionalization of food safety. Food safety, it was important before, and it's getting more important right now in all the world. So we need to ensure all the protocols that are and the producers need to know that this is something that they must comply with, but they need all the guidance and help to follow up all the important protocols and the important standards that we have in the world. And this is something that also the international cooperation is helping with and can help a lot more. But this works with institutionalization and of course the help of both public and private sectors with the help of cooperation. And then the other one is the optimization of digital processes and negotiations and trade negotiations specifically. Ecuador is following up an important trade agenda with negotiation with several other countries. We have a disadvantage in these terms with other of our partners in the region and in the world, but the government of Ecuador is now following up an important agenda for trade negotiation, and this includes fair trade products and specifically the benefits for SMEs and of course the food production to ensure that they can have a better market access for our producers. So this is just in the main context of the lessons learned and the main actions that our government, Ecuador, is being following up regarding fair trade and what has happened and what is coming in the upcoming years.
Okay, thank you very much. And allow me to pose a follow-up question. You mentioned that there are public policies in Ecuador. Would be interested to hear a bit more on how these national policies can also contribute to build back fair, also global trade to the benefit of smallholder farmers.
Thank you, Sergi. Also an important question. And we believe that this concept about to build back fair, it's very important to keep up and to raise a lot more of importance to it in the whole World Trade Organization and all the institutions that are around trade. This is becoming more important, and that's a good thing, but we need to keep up the pace for that. So there's a couple of main aspects that all the stakeholders that promote fair trade and build back fair need to keep in mind, and this includes governments, but also producers organizations, and of course the civil society institutions. As the first one is to raise awareness and the importance of fair trade and consumption of fair trade, and this includes the promotion as well of fair trade in all the markets as aggressive as we can. The second one will be to promote the fair trade organizations and fair trade producers to get involved with international trade, because the market, especially for developing countries, the market is not mainly among our countries, but on developed markets, on developed countries. So international trade is very important for these type of organizations and for this type of promotion. And then the strength, the regulatory framework, which is more dedicated to government, of course. So regarding these last aspects about the government's structure and what public policy can do on this, we have as well each of these pillars. In the case of Ecuador, each pillar has had its own public policy guidelines and specific programs. So in accordance to our experience and based on the identified needs of our sectors, the recommendation on our side is that these four pillars these pillars that I have mentioned need to be work at the same time, and they all work close related. Necessary in the first place to develop the adequate institutional framework, and governments need to have an institutional framework for specific fair trade or fair trade related. Not all of the countries have these specific framework that needs to put the importance of it at the center of the table, and this includes the identification of specific actors and roles that they play in all the public policy. Subsequently, as I was saying, it's very important, and I would say that this is the most important one, to develop the awareness and raising of the process and training in fair trade. Because this is the main factor that will give sustainability to all the actors, and all governments need to work as hard as they can in promoting and in raising awareness for the fair trade consumption, both in the country but also with the hand on with other organizations in foreign markets. But this also includes, and this is an important strategy, this also includes kind of a co-responsible with other organizations in consumption countries. No, we have, for example, it is well known that Ecuador is the main exporter in the world for bananas, among other products, and we have a lot of quality and a lot of fair trade that it's involved with bananas. And some countries are requiring every day are requiring more and more certifications about fair trade, and this is important because it promotes better conditions for the people at our countries. But at the same time, prices for these products need to be taken into account all the efforts that this brings and the challenges that it brings to organizations and producers. And what we have seen in some countries is the contrary, and this is kind of a disruption that we want to correct. But if you implement a lot of fair trade related policies and promote this, it's also engaging, and this is important to take into account. It is a co-responsibility to take into account for also the prices involved in this payment. But if the prices keep going down with some specific actors, this kind of disrupts all the concept that we try to follow up and the sustainability of fair trade and all the producers. So this is an important aspect in raising the awareness and a co-responsible action for this. In addition, I would say it's not only necessary to work on demand, but also on the supply thing. This is what I was saying about the strengthening the regulatory framework inside our countries for food safety, especially right now in these times that food safety has become even more important than it was before. So the government entities must assume the joint responsibility of strengthening the organizations that produce and market their products under the fair trade and sustainability principles. This is a challenge in many of our countries, but it's definitely important to focus and have some actions related to this to implement with the producers. And our country has a lot of public policy on this to implement better standards for food safety to guarantee the quality of food among the world. And finally, to treat all these aspects, but in a right way, we have implemented an interinstitutional committee for the promotion of fair trade in our country, which has participation of both public institutions, but also private institutions and producers that are represented in this committee, and work together for aiming to the main activities and main actions, both in public policy, but also the engagement with international actors as well. So this complements all the aspects of the experience and how can we strengthen the Build Back Better and in the experience of Ecuador, what we are doing right now.
Thank you very much, Vice Minister. That was very informative. Want to quickly move from Ecuador now to Bolivia. We visit another country, and I'm honored that we have ROXANA with us. From your experience as a leader of fair trade organizations in Bolivia, of artisans and small farmers, what would be, from your perspective, the lessons learned from the disruption caused by COVID and the mechanisms that emerged to cope with those negative effects?
Gracias, Sergi. Primeramente quisiera agradecer por la invitación cursada a este foro de la OMC. Bueno, en Bolivia se ha declarado un cierre de fronteras y una cuarentena rígida que no ha permitido el traslado de ciudades a pueblos, ¿no? Esto ha generado muchas dificultades para los productores para poder exportar sus productos y también para poder obtener alimentos básicos, ¿no? En algunas regiones. En América Latina y el Caribe, la pandemia ha tenido un fuerte impacto en la economía de los pequeños productores y productoras, pues se ha registrado una disminución de sus ingresos y las ventas de sus productos, así como un incremento en los costos de producción debido al aumento de los precios de los insumos agrícolas. Y también una necesidad para poder comprar el tema de los insumos para poder implementar los protocolos de bioseguridad. Además, se ha experimentado una escasez de alimentos en diferentes países. Por ello, consideramos de suma relevancia poder reflexionar sobre la necesidad de tener sistemas alimentarios que pongan a los seres humanos al centro, que retomen la sabiduría ancestral, las tradiciones de nuestros pueblos, que garanticen la soberanía alimentaria. Otra lección aprendida es que al tener organizaciones fuertes y promover la asociación de los pequeños productores y productoras, nos hace que seamos más resilientes, pues a través de la asociación que promovemos el tema de la solidaridad en tiempos de crisis.
Thank you very much, Roxana. That was clear, to the point, and key messages. And I love your mask as well today. You always have very beautiful masks. Next is actually Anders Aeroe from ITC. And Anders, I'd like to ask you to build on what the previous panelists have said. In your view, what can be done to make global food systems be built to value smallholder farmers?
So thank you very much, Sergi, and thank you very much for inviting ITC to this important discussion. So today's session's topic, Build Back Better or Build Back Fairer, transforming global trade for smallholders, is indeed a topic that's high on ITC's agenda and is at the heart of our Alliances for Action program, a program that leverages partnerships for sustainable food systems. We have, in recognition of small-scale farmers, published in the beginning of the pandemic, booklets and related videos acknowledging what we call the unsung heroes. We do believe that the small-scale farmers are the unsung heroes of our global food systems. Yet, as we know, they're often the most challenged and the least rewarded. So Building Back Better calls for a transformation of the way we produce and trade food, so these systems can be more durable and sustainable. And this means building global food systems that value agricultural commodities, and most importantly, the people who produce them. The world's smallholder farmers produce around a third of the world's food, according to new research by Aeroe. And these farmers are the backbone of the food systems in most countries and play an important role in the world's food supply chains. And yet, most small-scale farmers battle to make a decent living. So improving their livelihoods and quality of life and enabling their ability to thrive are paramount in building sustainable and inclusive food systems and related trade. Across several ITC initiatives and programs, CLARK, Fair Trade International, and other members of the fair trade system have been very valuable and strategic partners. Working together, we seek to help producers build resilience to climate change, market shocks, price volatility, and COVID-19 impact, and to unlock market opportunities. So let me give an example. For instance, in Ghana, in the cocoa sector, we are leveraging dynamic agroforestry, its climate-smart solution that contributes to improve biodiversity, capture carbon, increase food security, and build the resilience of production. And thanks to strong local partnerships, our work in the past year was not interrupted. Farmers needed to go to the field as their crops continued to grow, obviously, during the pandemic. And we were able to support them and provide them with the continuity they needed through our local and regional partners. Another example is from Jamaica, where our Alliances Vaccine Program, its regional partner, the Coconut Industry Board, we have partnered with the Alligator Head Foundation. An organization engages a collaborative approach to protect fish stocks, restore habitats, and regenerate local economies. This is to enable a true production system transformation that empowers farmers in line with concepts of green growth and the blue economy. So these two multi-layer project examples demonstrate that it is indeed possible to increase food security and build the resilience of production and income through one main transformative action. So our Alliances Vaccine Program continues calls on strategic partnerships, bringing together private and public sector actors with the aim of sharing knowledge that enables smallholders to strengthen their competitiveness, focus on income risk diversification, and improve value addition and commercial linkages. Joint action is the key to delivering concrete results to complex challenges and to create transformative impact for good. And together with our partners, we are committed to supporting developing countries to grow their economies and achieve fair living incomes through trade. While there is no overnight solution to the problems posed by the current crisis, we can find ways to adapt to this new reality and to mitigate further damage. But our plea is, let's go even further and think of a long-term vision rather than just getting through tomorrow, so to speak. So let's join forces to create a network of actors, of women and men entrepreneurs looking to collectively and sustainably transform their economies and elevate their quality of life through creative and innovative measures, long-term vision and strategic partnerships. And let's allow this global challenge to be an inspiration for opportunities and growth. So to make this happen, I propose we join forces to explore new market opportunities, to generate better returns, more income streams, and new commercial channels, taking local and regional markets as key assets into consideration. Also suggest we join forces to prioritize value addition, exploring new markets, calls for a stronger focus on value-added products and for development of new innovative products and services, thereby creating a market for leveraging local, regional, international value chains. I also suggest we join forces to digitalize. Innovation and tech solutions will play a critical role in improving the business landscape coming out of this pandemic. So small business ventures into digitalization and e-commerce can trigger significant increases in productivity and income. Digitalization can, if managed well, also bridge the gap between producers, buyers, and consumers and respond to a rising demand for transparent, responsible production and consumption. And finally, I call for plea to strengthen and expand value chain alliances to foster innovation, investments, and equitable value distribution that can help enterprises and entrepreneurs become more efficient, scale up productivity, and increase their incomes. A relationship of trust and transparency between buyers, producers, and value chain operators can also contribute to reducing the asymmetries in the distribution of risks and contribute to better incomes and livelihoods for the producers supplying into these value chains. The key is to make this work. The key to making this work is to foster solutions and public-private alliances to promote sustainable trade that rewards smallholder producers better and incentivizes the next generation of agribusiness players to remain in a transformed food system that can enable them to thrive. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anders. And before I give the floor to the last panelist, Nyagoin Ngo, I'd like to remind participants in this session that you can type questions. There is a system that should allow you to type questions And if you type them in, this will allow me to then facilitate them and direct them to either one panelist. Specifically, please indicate it if it's a question to one or if it's a general question. Thanks in advance. So don't hesitate to do it. And in the meantime, yes, I'd like to give the floor now to Ngo, Global CEO of Fair Trade, to also share a very similar question I'm going to ask you. From your perspective, what are the lessons learned from COVID, and what does it mean in terms of next steps and partnerships for change for small farmers?
Thank you very much, Sergi, and thank you for inviting Fair Trade International to this panel discussion. Like has been alluded to by the previous three speakers, really, about stakeholders' involvement. I think what the COVID crisis has shown is that all stakeholders, from consumers, traders, importers, exporters, governmental bodies, must all play their part in ensuring smallholder farmers are able to achieve a living income and workers secure living wages for their households. Because really, living income and living wages are human rights. In order for trade to be a true leverage to poverty reduction and sustainable livelihoods, there must be fairer relations from end to end of the global supply chain, especially in times of crisis like we've been through in the last 1.5 years. Fairer prices, fairer terms of trade, fairer commitments to investment in sustainable production, and fairer balance of power is what fair trade stands for, and what we welcome others to partner with us to achieve a fair trading future for all. Our vision as fair trade is sustainable livelihoods for farmers and workers, but this won't be realized until all governments play their part. We should not expect the market alone to deliver improved livelihoods for farmers and workers. This is not to say that governments are not doing their bit. Some are, as we've heard from the example of Ecuador. So I'd like to highlight 3 examples of useful actions by 3 national governments during this pandemic that we have experienced almost directly as fair trade. First and foremost, the German government, the German Federal Ministry of Economic Cooperation and Development, with support from the German Society for International Cooperation, GIZ. We are truly grateful to this government for the humane support of the fair trade farmers and workers. It financed COVID relief and resilience funds of more than 15 million euros to support fair trade producers, their families, and their communities. This benefited over 900 producer organizations, covering over 500,000 farmers and workers in 57 countries. Some of the benefits that they got was they were able to fill the gap of wages for workers of whom would have lost their jobs or would have gone on unpaid leave. Provide food vouchers. They will use them for running costs for their farms to ensure continuity, but of course also to provide health and safety equipment to their members and workers. But more importantly, resilience, the ability to do crop diversification and income diversification, as Anders talks about, so as not to rely wholly on the export product. And as we know, exportation during this period of COVID has been difficult. One of the farmers that I talked to actually said this, and I quote, "It's probably the most hopeful thing that happened to us in a while, the intervention with the German funds." And of course, we've heard from Daniel about Ecuador, about their public policy on fair trade, and we congratulate Ecuador and other countries that have already put in place such policies. This is highly commendable, and we urge more governments, both in the global south and north, to follow such example. And I'd just like to point out at this point in time that the Fair Trade Advocacy Office is setting up an informal network of countries that are interested in promoting fair trade policies at national level. Therefore, I urge all of you who want to know more to get in touch with them. The third example and final example that I'd give is last but not least really, is the bold and historic step that was taken by the Cote d'Ivoire and Ghanaian governments in introducing the living income differential. This was an extra $400 per ton of cocoa on top of the FOB price, which they refer to as a living income differential. This is really the two governments taking the route towards a living income for cocoa farmers. Having given these governments as examples, the three, it's not exhaustive. May I also point out that we as Fairtrade have been keeping quite close to the farmers and workers during this very difficult period. The first step was to make sure that the use of the Fairtrade premium was kept flexible and that producers could choose how to use them as relief or maintaining their businesses. The second step that we took as Fairtrade was to set up a relief fund. And this was from contribution from our members across the globe. And this was passed on to the producers equally to meet immediate relief measures, such as personal protection equipment, food supplies, covering increased storage and transport costs during lockdown, etc. With this, you realize that fair trade is not just about certification and trade justice, but also about social justice. We want a fairer future for all.
Thank you very much, Niagoy, and to all the panelists. It was very exciting and remarks and complimentary, and at the same time different and very encouraging with all these good practices. So I'm trying to collect some answer from the questions from different sources. So one is to you, Anders. There is one specific question, as ITC has done a lot of work on sustainability markets. So the volume, it's a question from Tamas Vatai. The volume of sustainably certified products is growing with rising consumer awareness and demand for sustainable products. Could you please elaborate a bit on the role of sustainability standards in building back FAIR post-COVID? And he says as well, thank you and congratulations to all for excellent presentations.
Thank you very much for this question. And I have to confess, it's not something we have planted, but it sits extremely well with ITC because yesterday we celebrated the 10-year anniversary of our program, Trade for Sustainable Development, that focuses on what we call voluntary sustainability standards, fair trade being a classic one of these, but also the many standards that are set by the buyers. We do believe that standards help a lot because what else can you relate to when it comes to setting one product apart from another? So yes, standards do help if managed well, as we see with the fair trade and other. A big problem in certain sectors might be the proliferation of the many standards. But what we have seen, however, is, as it also in the question, a growing uptake from the market when it comes to products that are produced in a fair, ethical, equitable, and also now green manner. And we do believe it helps also the producer and the consumer to navigate if there are these standards that can help them understand what's happening, and also at the same time help the producers understand to which standards they need to produce to be certified. But also, as Ngoyo just said, fair trade and related other standards, it's so much more than just the standards. It's to assist broad-based sustainable and inclusive development, living income, and all what follows. So yes, I do believe that standards help a lot. We have published yesterday, or launched yesterday, a publication where we reflect on 10 years of voluntary sustainability standards, what they have made possible, and also look a bit into the future with some predictions on their role in the future. I'll be pleased to share that in the link. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So now I have a question, I think, more for Niagoy. It's a follow-up question in relation to your reference to Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana from Jacques Berthelot. So he's asking, how come are you saying that the cocoa production of Côte d'Ivoire and Ghana is fair trade, as a large part of the manpower is made of quasi-slave labor of children from Burkina Faso and Mali? And what about their huge deforestation and the impact on climate change? So maybe you want to react or would contextualize this question?
Yes, I can try and react to that. One, I'd just like to emphasize that fair trade is present in those vulnerable areas where we face such challenges. And with our fair trade farmers, we work with them to ensure that there is a lot more reduced child labor, etc. But what we address, is not, the problem is not child labor on the surface. We address the causes of child labor, the inequities that are there, the low prices. I must say, honestly speaking, having grown up as a child of a farmer, there is no parent who would want to send their child to the farm and not school if they could. But because of the low prices that they get, because of the limited education facilities and so many other things that lead to child labor, for example, that lead to deforestation, because with my piece of land, I might not be able to produce the volumes that I need based on the prices that exist for me to be able to have a decent life. So I will extend my land for that reason. So I think what we should be concentrating on is what are the underlying causes of all this. And this is where, as fair trade, we work in. And as I said, we're not just about certification. We look at these underlying causes of child labor, of deforestation, etc. So, and when we do find them, we work together with the community to ensure that they overcome these issues. And this is why we call on governments and our commercial partners that paying fair prices is critical in addressing these issues.
Okay, thank you very much for the clarification and the excellent points. So there is another question I would like to encourage maybe Roxana Cayo and Daniel Legarda to respond if they believe it relevant, which is, there is a lot of talk about sustainable trade policies and aid for trade. This is, of course, an important part of the agenda as well of WTO. And smallholder farmers, small enterprises have been mentioned very often in the context of aid for trade, but a bit less smallholder farmers. So the question is, how can such sustainable trade and aid for trade policies contribute to higher incomes, living incomes for small farmers? What would be your recommendations or good practices that you would like to share? And I do not know if Roxana, you want to start maybe, or Daniel, or others?
Please, by all means, woman first. Roxana, it will be more than important.
So
Gracias. A ver, yo creo que en el tema, para ver este punto, deberíamos centrarnos en el tema de la importancia de la asociatividad, ¿no? La asociatividad que permite pertenecer a sistemas de comercio justo y desarrollar más el tema de resiliencia, ¿no? En el tema de lo que se habla de la reconstrucción de políticas, es necesario promover un comercio justo en todas las partes del sistema alimentario para poder luchar con las desigualdades y la pobreza. Deben promoverse relaciones comerciales justas, horizontales, estables a largo plazo. El pago de precios justos tanto para productores como para consumidores, democratizando el tema del consumo de los productos agroecológicos, incluir en los costos sociales y ambientales los productos convencionales como agroecología y así como autoorganización y autogestión y la asociación de productores y consumidores. Además, deben apoyar tal vez el tema de la protección del medio ambiente mediante el pago diferenciado a productos agroecológicos, la promoción de los productos agroecológicos locales y estratégicos y el autoconsumo. Los gobiernos deben apoyar con políticas de cuidado, otorgando beneficios sociales y económicos y ambientales. Gracias.
Okay, thank you very much. Vice Minister, you have the floor.
Thank you, Sergey and Roxana. Just to complement a little bit on those. So aid is very important, and aid goes in both ways, for private sector, but also through government. And both of them have an important role to play. I would say that the small producers benefit from this specific aid in many ways, but I will highlight two of them that are mainly optimal from my point of view. The first one is to get involved into best practices or improving practices for their own benefit in production. As I mentioned before, food safety is an important aspect, along with all the aspects around fair trade that are also relevant and socially more important, specifically for what Niagoy had just mentioned about social equity. But there's also the market part that producers need to take into account, and market standards, and they need help to achieve these important standards. So aid for trade on this matter is very important for small producers, and it's in the case of our country, I would say it's very well channeled, both from government aid, but also from the one that goes directly to organizations. And the second one is the strengthening of the associations of associativity, what Roxana just mentioned. The strengthening of the association is a key aspect for working together and achieving better, not only better standards, as I mentioned before, but also to achieve better numbers in terms of productivity, a workforce that it's more strong to improve their communication, to improve their relation with the governments, to improve their relations with foreign stakeholders, and directly with, in the best cases, directly with buyers in international markets. So definitely aid for trade, it's an important component of all these institution around the world, and it's definitely benefits directly the small producers. It has space for improvement. I think it always has, both from the government side and both from what it goes directly. But it's definitely a component that needs to be not only followed up, but strengthened in the upcoming years.
Thank you very much. And time flies, and we only have 12 minutes left. So I'm going to be starting asking, unfortunately, each of you for a final statement. Because of the order of these last interventions, I'm going to be starting with Anders, then Niagoy, then Roxana, and then the Vice Minister. So Anders, you have been very popular in the Q&A function, and there is also a specific question to you, which you may want to mention briefly, maybe in your final statement, which is if you could give some examples of private-public alliances involving ITC to catalyze and promote sustainable trade that rewards smallholder farmers fairly. And then, yeah, your final comment, if possible. Thank you.
Yeah, so thank you very much for that, Sergey. Yeah, as it has been said many times, it is a partnership between public, private, NGOs, and so on. Give you an example from Ghana, where we have been working with Kwapa Cocoa Farmers Union in cocoa. We have been working with related institutions, private as well as public support institutions, policymakers, and the full value chain up to supermarkets in Europe, including here in Switzerland, and also a big chocolate producer, Swiss chocolate producer. So it goes all the way down, up and down the value chain, and at the same time involves policymakers, support institutions, co-ops, and also in this case, Kwapa Cocoa, which is a cocoa co-op for around 100,000 producers. We've also introduced multi-cropping there, supporting them not only to do cocoa, but also, for instance, to grow yams, which have provided additional income from local markets and also the food crop, and also changed in some cases the gender relationship in as far as it's the women that often gets the funding, the funds from selling the food crops in markets. So let me spend my last minutes here to advertise the coffee guide we will produce and launch the 1st of October, the International Coffee Day. It's the 4th edition on the coffee guide, and it's a great example we find of engaging supply chain actors from farm to fork, or in this case, from seed to cup, to build a shared inclusive resource for all sector stakeholders. So this 4th edition is directly informed by the coffee industry at large. It has updated tech information, also gives prime importance to the issues like climate change, coffee price volatility, living wage, and the equitable distribution of power, profit, and resources across the supply chain. It has been a fantastic, I have to say, collaboration between all sector stakeholders, with more than 70 stakeholders involved in the production of this new guide. And it will be free of charge for everybody to download on ITC's website when it's launched here on 1st October. So that's another way we want to contribute to this important discussion and also provide public goods in this context. Thank you, Sadie.
Okay, thank you, very good. So basically, rendezvous 1st of October on, is it intracen.org, right? That's right. Okay, great. Let's see how many clicks we get. Now, so I would like now to ask actually Nyagoi also, like, and also let me fish another of the questions that has been mentioned in case it can inspire for your main takeaway from the session. One of the key questions is, in the end, how can world trade be rebuilt more fairly for global food supply chains to be taken over and improve the livelihoods of small farmers?
Thanks for that. Actually, that relates very well with what I was going to say as my last two minutes, because there's no one tool really to achieve sustainable livelihoods for farmers and workers. We all must work in partnership to build a fairer tomorrow. I believe the key word here really is in partnership, all players working together. We as fair trade, we're doing our bit towards a sustainable future, a fairer future, and a more just future for the farmers and workers, for the vulnerable farmers and workers. But partnership is the tool for success. At Fair Trade, our partnership is really our DNA. We start from the way we are structurally designed. We are a partnership with half ownership by the farmers, by the producer networks of Africa and the Middle East, Asia and Pacific, Latin America and the Caribbean, and the other half by the national fair trade organizations in the global north. So in fair trade, the farmers and workers have a voice of developing the standards. They have a voice in our strategy. They have a voice in our governance. So that level of partnership, first and foremost, is important. Then there's partnership with local communities and consumers. You find that our members across the world run public mobilization campaigns through fair trade towns, fair trade schools, universities, faith-based organizations. Then, of course, there are the national governments, which we've heard from Ecuador, and we really congratulate Ecuador for having such an ambitious fair trade public policy. And as Anders has indicated, we also have partnerships with international organizations. We've got a long track record actually with ITC. And I'm really pleased that ITC is in the house today, as well as with other UN bodies. So really my answer to that is working together. No one has one answer. All coming together have the answer. So we need global solutions to end inequality and global rules to achieve a fairer future for all. And if we all truly believe in human rights, then let's walk the talk and commit to a sustainable, fairer, and just future for all. Thank you, Sergi.
Oh, thank you. Excellent. And now I will give the floor to Roxana. Roxana, from your perspective, if there was one key message that you would want the people that are listening to this message, to this event live or the recorded version, diplomats, trade officials, industry associations, what would be the message that you would like them to remember?
Bueno, creo que a nivel global se debe expandir la demanda de los productos de comercio justo, pues es necesario que haya más mercados para los pequeños productores y productoras que puedan vender a precios justos y con valor agregado. Como productos orgánicos saludables, como por ejemplo cafés especiales. A nivel de los gobiernos, tanto nacionales como internacionales, deben promover la participación de los pequeños productores en las licitaciones y las compras públicas, promover el consumo consciente. Se debe promover más mercados locales, pero con conciencia, para que se valore el trabajo de los pequeños productores y productoras. Gracias.
Gracias. Thank you very much, Roxana. And I just want to show as well that in the questions and answers, the good initiative has been taken by Christina, by Kelly, to share some links that are interesting in relation to the coffee guide launch, and a very interesting series of documentaries as well, following 3 farmers across the world facing the COVID crisis, which I can only recommend you have a look. So you will find it in the Q&A section. Don't hesitate to check it out. Having said that, then I would like also to give the floor to you, Vice Minister, for also a concluding remark. Any additional message that you also would like to share with the participants today?
Thank you, Sergi, and all the participants and panelists as well. So it's mainly 3 big messages that I wanted to give from the point of view of the government of Ecuador and Ecuador related to fair trade, and especially to Build Back Fairer and the work that we are doing together around the world. The first one is resilience. It's been documented and well known that even though COVID has impacted a lot, especially among small producers and farmers, they are resilient, and hopefully these organizations are more flexible and can adapt also to the changes that the COVID has bring to this new world. But resilience is the main aspect. The second one is, and Roxana mentioned, is the importance of market access and trade facilitation focused with activities and specific actions and public policy actions on fair trade, producers and small and business and medium enterprises. This is very important, especially for developing countries. And the other one is institutions, the strengthening of institutions and the build of institutionalizations, both with public policy, government, but also with the collaboration of stakeholders, consumers, producers, NGOs, and of course, such important organizations as the WTO in this shared objective of building back fairer. That'll be mainly the main aspects that I wanted to highlight, Sergi, and thanks again.
Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the panelists for the discipline as well in sticking to the messages. Thanks very much. We're going to be wrapping up this event. I would like to thank all the co-organizers of this event and panelists for useful contributions. I think if I had to summarize in one message that came repeatedly, is that it is a complex problem, that it is important to transform global food systems, to ensure that farmers are resilient, that they have a living income. And I think something that has been repeatedly stated is the role of partnerships. Nobody has come here to say, I have the solution and I'm going to tell you what to do. I think everybody has been very cooperative on this approach, and on this partnership approach, we encourage you to get in touch. I think that on LinkedIn and through the websites that have been shared, you should be able to find the different participants in this panel. Get in touch if you're interested to partner up with all of us in achieving these empowerment of smallholders, in particular in still these difficult times post-COVID. We will be concluding this event now, and time is ticking. The recording will remain available on the WTO website, and I hope this will not be the last, but a long series of discussions with governments, with private sector, civil society about how to build back fairer, in particular from a small producer point of view. So thank you very much, and have a good day and a good evening wherever you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.